Oh, okay. So now, okay, I'll just get all this up. Okay, so I think some people on this call were on the uh, talk I did on financing a project, and I just thought it would be worthwhile going through the requirements for a funding proposal. Oh, just in sort of relation to what we've just talked about. So basically, if you think that if you've determined that the project is viable, then you want to move pretty quickly to actually secure the property. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But before I go on to that, I just want to go through the things that you need to have included in your funding proposal if you want to be taken seriously. So obviously there's a loan application. Then you need to put in your background so that you can sell yourself, anything that is relevant to what you're planning to do. Assets and liability, income and budget, that's personal income and budget. Documentation of your research. So all the research that you've done, you need to get that into this document to support your plan and demonstrate your expertise so that the organisation knows that you are serious, you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. Your property due diligence, valuation as complete if that's what you're planning to go. You also need to put in a rental estimate, so get that from your agent because that helps with even though you're not planning to rent it out, it helps with your serviceability calculation. Market comparison report, you'll get that from one of your local agents just to demonstrate to the lender the types of sales that have been in the local area that you're comparing your property to. Project details. So here you put in your budget, your program, your feasibility, how you intend to execute the renovation, and concept plans and drawings, the contract. Now, I've said subject to finance here, but I think I talked to you before about the fact that you can sign a contract and you have 5 days 5 days cooling off, but you need to, if you can get it subject to finance and due diligence, that's the ideal. Okay, so I've just pretty well covered everything there, I think. So next thing we get up to is actually negotiating the deal. Now, the advertised price of a private treaty property is usually the vendor's optimistic price. Be aware that for an auction property, agents often include a low price guide to attract more bidders in the hope that they'll stretch their limit on the day. So by law, they are obliged to have a guide of within 10% of the reserve, but in reality, this is impossible to regulate. Actually, last week, property quite near us had a guide of 1,050,000 and it sold for 1.35, so that was well outside the 10%. So you need to determine your upper limit that you're willing to pay for the property based on your feasibility, and under no circumstances go above it. Establish your vendor's circumstances. What are their motivators? And this will help you to inform the way you structure your offer. Deceased estate properties often go to auction with more than one person making the decision. Making an offer prior to the auction is usually unproductive, as the decision won't be made until auction day when all the interested parties are available. If it's for private sale, the less conditions that you need to add to the mix, the more attractive it will look. Another common reason is marriage or relationship breakup. In this case, vendors usually want to move on quickly to make a fresh start and free themselves from the financial ties. So they're usually highly motivated to move on. Downsizing or relocating. If the vendor has already purchased another property, their motivation to accept an offer will increase the closer they get to the moving date. and financial difficulties, these people often sell their homes in preference to the bank foreclosing. Understand negotiating collateral other than the price. Try to establish offers that are a win-win. The more conditions your offer carries in your favour, the weaker your offer will be. I've said never sign an unconditional contract without a subject to finance and due diligence. And if you want to reduce the number of strings you attach to your offer, you can undertake the due diligence and the 5-day cooling off. This only applies to private treaty because properties sold at auction, even if it's after the auction, do not have a cooling off period. So if it's sold on auction day, there's no cooling off period. The thing to be aware of when you go down this path is that once the cooling off period expires, the contract automatically becomes unconditional unless you negotiate an extension to the cooling off or you do actually cool off. So it's not a case of you basically have to make sure that your legal representative actually extends the cooling off or lets the other party know that you are cooling off, because otherwise you'll end up in an unconditional contract without your finance or due diligence done. So have I made, it's 5 days Australia-wide.
There's a question there.
Actually, to be honest with you,
Bernadette, there's a question.
Yes, I've got that. Thanks,
Right.
Eva. To be honest with you, Melanie, I'm not 100% sure about that. So it might be an idea I'll actually check that and I'll let you know when I send the email out later in the week. Thanks. You need to balance the offer with conditions that will appeal to the buyer, like settlement time. A longer settlement time will be better for you so you can get the renovation plan in place before you start paying interest. However, it may need to be accompanied with the price that is towards the upper end of your range. Early access. This is essential to get preparation done. Some renovators negotiate to start the work in this period. This is not something I would advocate. I think it's quite risky. The release of the deposit. If your vendor is wanting to move on to purchase another property, you may agree to the release of the deposit. Usually it's held in trust. This is something that if you decide to go down that path, that you need to get some legal advice before you do it, because you are really at risk. Now, another question. The 2.5% holding deposit, is it? Sorry, did I say 2 point? It's 0.25%, and it's of the total price. So basically, that's to hold it until the contract becomes unconditional. And when it becomes unconditional, you need to then pay the full 10%. So the difference between that and the 10% gets paid on when it's gone unconditional. So you pay the 2.5 when you exchange, and then the rest 5 days later, or if it's different in another state, I'll check. Okay, so now the other thing that sometimes comes up is vendor finance, and if that is available, then that's fantastic. And it may not be vendor finance on the whole amount. It may be on, they may be offering a portion of vendor finance, and in which case that's money that if you can negotiate that, then that's money that you're not having to outlay. There's usually terms with that, and any contract that you enter into, get legal advice, get your solicitor to go over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that you are well protected. Okay.